There we go. I'm live now. Okay, good morning. Hello and welcome to a live stream for Digital Studies 101, Intro to Digital Studies. This is week 2, day 1, and I am still the professor, Zach Whalen. Thanks for watching, and good morning, and thanks for saying good morning already on the stream chat there. Good to see you, Nadibo Buddy. I know your real name, but I will just refer to you by your screen name. Cool, so we're gonna get started here. All right, yeah, great, another good morning. Yeah, wherever you're watching, it's always nice to see who's out there, like specifically who's out there. Like I see 7 viewers on the dashboard right now, but you know, it looks like a few more people online in Discord, so you can always say hi either in the live stream chat channel in Discord or on the Twitch channel. Let me turn off my music. Yeah, there we go. So I'm keeping my microphone a little bit higher than I did last week. I hope that's working a little bit better for the YouTube captions. We'll find out, I guess. I need to go back and review it, but that's the idea. Also, I've kind of changed my layout here. I don't have the normal to-do list thing, kind of because the slideshow that I'm going to work through today has a lot of content in it anyway, and it'll provide the structure for what I want to talk about. In fact, I'm going to share the slides with you all in just in the various channels, just for your own reference in case you want to look through it, because this one, like I said, is a bit more information dense than other slideshows that I've been doing. So let me go ahead and do that now before I forget. And hello, Asia, good to see you online. So anyone with the link can view. Yep, copy, good. Okay, I'll just put it in both places. Here's my slides. If you pasting that link in both of those channels, so there you go. So hopefully you all have access to that if you need that, if that's helpful. Right, so this is week 2, and there's a lot going on in week 2, so I want to get into it pretty quickly here. Just a few kind of general things first. Obviously, I've received your work from week 1. That was it was looking good. I'm starting to work my way through that. Many of you asked about extensions, or because things are due on Friday night, you needed a day or two more to do that. This is just my general statement, my general policy about that, which is that it's usually fine. I don't usually mind if things are a day or two late. The only issue is if it's like 5 or 6 days late, and then you're like trying to do 2 weeks of thing at the same time. That's something that does take a bit more work sometimes, and that's where we need to have a conversation about which things to prioritize. And but still, there's different ways to work through the material, and the timing is not as important as it might be in other classes. As long as you're getting to it, as long as you're getting through it, and as long as it's not piling up. Now, eventually, I will have to insist on a pretty hard deadline whenever I have to finalize grades for this term. But for now, anyway, yeah, I mean, we're still getting used to the rhythms of things, and I understand that it may take a bit of time. And some of you might be, working a full-time job throughout the week, and so you really only can sit down and do this on Saturdays. I get that, and that's fine. But I do appreciate if you let me know kind of what your timeline is with these things, just so I know not to worry about you or follow up and try to figure out where things are. Now, this week I actually do have a bit more, as you can see on the slide where I am right now. I do have a bit of a recommended structure here, and I can talk about that once I get to it. But first, I was over here to talk about the outcome of the quiz or the survey I sent out last night. Just in case you're interested, I mean, this is anonymous, so I'm not showing anyone's individual response. But I'm not really sure how this is. I don't think 17 people filled it out, but it does say 17. Anyway, it does look like 10 people said they would be available in the AM for streaming, and that tracks pretty closely to the information survey that I sent out at the beginning of the semester. About 10 people were only available in the morning, about 10 were only available in the afternoon. In terms of this survey, it's a little bit less than that, so it actually is a little bit more people saying they're available in the mornings, if that makes sense. And by the way, this correctly, Canvas doesn't, it says that this is the correct answer, but that's not true. That's always what it does. All of these are fine, whatever your options, whatever you've selected here. So I've looked through your free-form comments as well, and as I said in the announcements this morning, one drawback is I can't respond directly to those because I don't know who left those comments, but I did reply to a couple of general things that I noticed in that announcement, mainly about the due date. So yeah, I do like to keep things due on Friday just to kind of say that's when you should try to get it done, but if it does take a few more days, that's usually okay. All right, so today we're starting week 2, and week 2 is focusing now on digital culture. And week 1 we looked at, I called it creating space because it was about digital creativity, but also creating a space for you to experiment with your digital creativity. I'm going to turn on my light here. I look a little shadowy. So week 1 was really about getting started, establishing a framework, kind of getting used to certain things. But now you're going to be using those things in the background of some other topics, right? So the idea is you've already got a website, you've got a blog, and I will ask you to use that, but that's not really the emphasis at this point. I'm not going to talk that much this week about building that because for most of you it's already built. So this week we're going to be doing some other things, looking at some other things, and your blog will be a useful place for you to do some of those things. So that's what we'll talk about here. The big thing, this is digital culture. So you remember digital creativity, digital culture, digital methodology. Those are the big 3 pillars of Digital Studies 101 as I see it. And this week we're looking at culture. And by that, I want to focus on information culture, or the I guess, informational landscape of the web, which is something that we deal with constantly if you're on social media, or even if you're not, you deal with the consequences of it. And I think it's important to understand how these platforms have been designed in ways that probably have led to some of the problems that we are facing as a culture because of different sources of information. So that's kind of the quick thumbnail of what we're doing this week. But you'll be completing an assignment related to that. You'll also be completing another module like you did for digital creativity. Again, that's a free form kind of content where you have a set of goals, but how you achieve those goals can vary, and it's really a chance to experiment and try different things. So you have one of those along with digital, with web literacy. So those 2 things, that will occupy your work this week, and it will be a fair amount of work. So I want to spend some time today talking about what that is and outlining the steps and the processes, and hopefully making as much of that as possible clear today so that you can start working on it today. All right, so as always, if you have questions as I'm talking, feel free to leave those questions in the chat. Otherwise, if you're watching this after the fact, then of course you can DM me or something, and you'll be able to have that too. Okay, so here we are. And, oh, great. So I see a couple of you are already looking at the slideshow. So let me switch to this view of it so I can show it here a little bit. I just changed the presentation, slides theme for this week I don't know why. So today, here are your goals, and these are the kind of high-level goals, and I have more specifically listed tasks in the notes for today. So those are the kind of high-level goals, but more specifically, I'm going to teach you about the premise of this assignment. I'm going to ask you to read the first 2 chapters in the introduction to a textbook. It's an online textbook. I'll show it to you in a minute. And then choose something to work on for your assignment, and take a look at your digital culture module. You don't actually have to choose a module today, but I do want you to choose an assignment for today. Choose a web literacy question for that assignment. Choose that today, ideally. Okay, but before we do that, I do want to talk a bit about hardening, what I'm calling hardening your web browser, or just preparing to enter into this kind of research. This is also just generally, I think, good advice for web browsing that you may not be familiar with. You may already know some of this stuff, and that's fine, and that's good. But I have a couple of suggestions that may make your browsing experience somewhat safer, somewhat more pleasant as you're doing things on the web. Then I want to talk about what I mean by web literacy, and then kind of show you how to get started with the web literacy assignment. Okay, so let's talk about web browser security for a bit. Actually, hang on a second. I'm going to switch something here. Sorry. Too many slides, back and forth. Okay, so web browser security. So I'm using a web browser right now, obviously, to present this. You use web browsers whenever you open something and you need to Google it, or ideally DuckDuckGo it. Maybe not ideally, but preferably. I'm going to argue that DuckDuckGo is a better search engine. This is the thing that we use all the time. Even on your phone, you probably have a web browser that you use. On a Mac phone, an Apple phone, an iPhone, you're going to likely be using Safari on that. For an Android phone, you have more options, or more default options, I guess, but probably Chrome is going to be the default browser on your phone. And these are tools. These are a web browser is a piece of software that accesses the web. If you remember from when I talked about URLs, the HTTP protocol is the first part of a URL. That's the web, and web browsers are also called clients, and these are user clients that are designed to access content over the HTTP protocol and render that content according to the rules of languages like HTML. that's a sort of technical explanation, but it's the thing that you're using. And there are several that you're probably familiar with, right? So Firefox, Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Safari, Brave, Opera. These are probably the most popular browsers at this point. Every now and then you'll see interesting ones come up that are different. If this is a space that you pay attention to, but this probably isn't, I'm guessing, a space that most people pay attention to, just because they use whatever is on their computer. It works. You click on the E on your Windows computer, you just click on the browser to open something up on your Mac computer. You may not think that much about your browser, like which browser you're using, but they are different, and I do want to actually make a recommendation about which browsers are superior. So ultimately, all of these are fine. These 6 that you see here, these are all fine. If you are committed to using one of these, I'm not going to try to talk you out of it. I just want you to be aware of some of the options that are available. And what you'll find is that with Firefox and Chrome especially, you have more options than other browsers. You have more plugins that you can take advantage of to customize your browsing experience, and also to secure your browsing experience if that's important to you. And I think it should be important to you. So that's where I'm kind of going from with this. You will also find that web browsers, in addition to giving you ways to access and browse the web, they also give you ways to debug the web or reverse engineer websites, which is something that will be important in 2 weeks when we get to that assignment. So I like the tools that Firefox and Chrome have in them for doing that kind of thing. I'm not sure if Edge has that. It probably does. Safari kind of does. Brave kind of does. I mean, so in other words, there are other tools in the web browser that you may not use that regularly, but that are pretty useful, and I like the ones in Chrome, or at least I'm used to the ones in Chrome, so I'm going to show you how to do stuff with that one. But between the two, I really like Firefox and Chrome. Okay, so a plugin or an add-on, it's kind of like a plugin in WordPress, which you may have experienced as you were customizing your site. These are little things that you can add to your browser that will make it better, that will do things to it to improve it. And I've got a list of some recommendations here, and I'll talk about these each briefly, but really I would just encourage you to Google these on your own and decide if they make sense for your browsing experience. The big one that I recommend is uBlock Origin. Let's see, I think you can see it if I click on it over here. I've got a lot of plugins. Some of these are just kind of random, but not super important. But the uBlock Origin, let's see, there it is. Wow, okay. It's hidden right now because of some other things, and you can't see the pop-up, I guess. That's what I was checking over here. But it does pop up and tell you like how many things it's blocked on whatever page you're viewing, and you can also turn it on and off, but it's trying to block ads mainly, and also tracking scripts and some other things. So uBlock Origin is one I recommend. There's other ad blockers out there. AdBlock Plus, I think, was one of them that I used for a while. But uBlock Origin is one of the oldest and one of the most reliable. I believe its list of things that it blocks is also open source, which is really helpful. AdBlock, I think it was AdBlock. One of them that I used to use, I forget, I'm blanking on the actual name of it, but it basically sold out, like basically a spam company bought the ad blocker, and so it was, everyone that was using it was basically sucked into this, their data was sucked into this, spam machine. But uBlock Origin, that does not happen in this case. So there's lots of different options among ad blockers. What's another one I used to like? Privacy Badger, that's another good one. What's that other one? I'm thinking the icon. Ghostery, that's another good one. But I like uBlock Origin. It's simple and it's easy to turn it on and off, because sometimes you do need to turn it on and off. HTTPS Everywhere, this is a plugin. I'll just go ahead and Google this. So HTTP versus HTTPS, those are two different protocols. So HTTP is the standard one. HTTPS is going to be encrypted, and you should always use HTTPS if you are interacting with a website where you have to log into it, because that's going to encrypt your login, especially if you're doing anything important like banking or registering for classes. You definitely want to be doing that with an HTTPS browser. The website that you're interacting with is responsible for making a secure connection available, the HTTPS connection available, and usually they will shift over to that on their own. But the HTTPS Everywhere plugin, all it does is it simply checks for that automatically. Like it makes this the default anyway. Like it forces your browser to seek this option before HTTP. So it's a little thing. It's easy to add. And it looks like actually they do have options for Edge, Brave, and Tor, even, and Opera. So it looks like a good way to do it. It is available, I think, in, well, so I was going to say the mobile browser that I prefer is Firefox Focus, which isn't listed here, but Firefox Focus does this also. Firefox Focus is basically like a really lightweight copy of Firefox. It runs on your Android or Mac or like iPhone, and it's basically like opening, every time you open the browser, it's like an incognito window. So it has an ad blocker, and it does defaults to HTTPS, and it blocks trackers and other nice little things. So I really like that for privacy. But looks like you can also, just using the regular mobile Firefox, you can also install HTTPS everywhere. So that's another recommendation. Dashlane, so I really strongly recommend you use a password manager. I've been using Dashlane for a while. I wouldn't say that I love it. I think it's fine, but there's also LastPass and KeePass and OnePass. These are other password managers, and the big thing about a password manager is that it remembers your passwords for you. So whenever you create a new account, you can, on some website or whatever, you can make that password like an 18-character long list of random letters and numbers and punctuation marks, and you don't have to remember it because your password manager remembers it for you. And it's very important to have separate passwords for different websites, and it's of course very hard to keep up with them on your own. So using a password manager that you log into with one password and then it logs into everything else for you, that's really the way to go. So I really strongly recommend that. Dashlane is fine. DuckDuckGo is a search engine. They've been doing a lot of ads on the radio lately, so I don't know why exactly, but that's fine, I suppose. Their big pitch is that they are not going to customize your searching. So Google does, though. Google is like, hey, this is like, if I Google myself on Google, then I'm very likely to come up with content about me because it knows it's me and it knows that I'm Googling myself. DuckDuckGo does not. So in terms of thinking about search engine optimization, sometimes it's useful to compare the two. But DuckDuckGo is not going to keep track of your search history. It's not going to do anything with that. There's no account to log into with DuckDuckGo, so it doesn't know that. And there are different ways that they can anonymously, it is technically possible to anonymously fingerprint a user, but DuckDuckGo promises that they do not do that. So that's, that's good. They've got a nice little thing here. You can set this to be your default browser your default search engine in whatever browser you prefer, and that's what I have. Sometimes I find that it doesn't give me the answer I'm looking for, so in that case, there's a couple of nice tricks. So like if I'm looking for, I'll show you a quick search. If I'm searching for myself here, I can quickly switch over to Google using the exclamation point Google, and then that switches me over here to Google really quickly. So sometimes I do that if there's something that I need to look for specifically there. And that's kind of interesting. You see the results are sort of different here. I think it's all me in this first page. Same here, but it's interesting that like, get off. On DuckDuckGo, my website comes up first, and on Google, currently my UMW profile comes up first. So that's kind of interesting. I prefer the other one. So for a much more rigorous kind of thing to lock down your browser, NoScript. NoScript is a Firefox only plugin, but it basically disables JavaScript entirely in your browser, which a lot of the things that you are used to seeing on web pages relies on JavaScript, and so you will often get error messages or get messages from websites saying, hey, you can't use this website unless you enable JavaScript. So, it's just it's more of an extreme measure, and I do use that sometimes. Okay, so some of the things you might want to think about in terms of security and privacy is kind of what is already known about you, and this is a good thing to check on periodically. So if you go to this website, adssettings.google.com, you can see what Google thinks about what Google thinks of you, and we often think about, Google has our data, but we don't always see or think about what that means or what data it has about us, or you may not even know how it uses that data. But one way it does is, of course, it customizes ads to send back to you. And, you may not know this, but it figures out a lot of this stuff by looking at things like your email. So it reads your email and it pays attention to which emails you read from other people. It pays attention to your search history, obviously, your YouTube history, to come up with a list of things that it thinks you're interested in. And I'm kind of skimming through my list right now. I haven't looked at this in a while. Some of this I think is true. I'm not particularly interested in Redfin. I get their spam emails all the time. I'm not interested in Noom. colleges and universities, sure. Comics, sure. Comedy films, I guess. Video games, yeah. Dogs. I mean, I like dogs, but I don't have a dog, so it doesn't necessarily make sense. So you can actually customize this as you're looking through this. Google would love for you to tell them what you want to be advertised about, or you could actually just turn off the entire thing, which is certainly possible. Yeah, this is kind of neat too. This is a new thing. You can turn off specific types of categories, just in as a like a broad brush approach there. So definitely something you should do. Take a look at. If you want to opt out entirely of this, they do let you do that. You just click this button to turn this off. But I kind of like turning it on just because it helps me show you all the things that I'm interested in doing, that is being revealed about me. And it's also kind of interesting to look at. Yeah, so like the Little Caesars app. I do use the Little Caesars app when I want to order a pizza from Little Caesars. But I don't always do that. So that's interesting that it shows up so high on my list. Got my age and gender right. Okay, so that's the way to check in on this. Another thing that's worth you looking at to kind of check, like how secure are you, is this tool here. This is the Cover Your Tracks tool, and what this is going to do is talk about tracking technology. So this is so cookies are probably the most well-known example of tracking technology. This is when you visit a website, that website downloads a small text file to your computer with data about your session, like it might be your just like the fact that you're logged in, or it might be your shopping cart if you're on a shopping website. That's pretty normal, but there are rules about how those are supposed to work, and not every company follows those rules. And one of the things that they do to kind of they find ways to work around the rules to follow your browsing habits around the web. So for example, when Google is figuring this stuff out, some of what it's figured out here might be which links I click on in my email, and then if it were tracking me, it might figure out like which link I clicked next, and kind of 3 or 4 clicks away from my email. That would be a tracking cookie or something to keep track of that, and that would be really valuable information to be able to tell an advertiser, like here's what people are doing after they visit your website. So Google can do a lot of that because it has such pervasive ad analytics. Right, but some companies and some software that does this is actually breaking. They're not allowed to do that. So I'm just thinking this out. This is a tool that's been updated, so I haven't actually run this recently, but I'm running this right now with my standard settings in Chrome to see what it comes up with. Okay, so it says I do have strong protection against web tracking. I am tracking ads. I am blocking tracking ads. I am blocking invisible trackers. I do, however, have a unique fingerprint, and that is very difficult to block. And you can see why if you click here. But that's, it's pretty good as far as this. And this is what you really want. So I'd recommend whichever browser you choose. Going back to that question about different browsers and options, like among this list. Go to this coveryourtracks.eff.org and kind of see how it stands up. You really do want to protect yourself against web tracking. It's an easy thing to do and kind of interesting, so I recommend it. Okay, now if you really want to be super secure, right, there are other things you can do if you're doing something sneaky. And this is if you are interested in researching the dark web or anything. I'm not going to recommend you do that, by the way, and I don't encourage you to do that. But if you were interested in that, or if you were looking at something that you thought might expose you to risks of different kinds, the Tor browser, using the Onion router kind of network, and a VPN that you trust, those are the best ways to do that. But even then, those aren't foolproof measures of protecting your privacy in terms of browsing. So it's always something you have to be careful about. But yeah, the Tor browser is interesting, but it's very slow. The thing that, like, if you are interested in this, the Brave browser. So it's a regular web browser called Brave, and they have a Tor client built into Brave as an option. So you can open a Tor tab in Brave, and so you can very quickly kind of get the Tor network up and running. And otherwise, it takes a lot of work to get onto a Tor browser. But the Brave browser makes that a bit easier if that's something you're interested in. Okay, so web literacy. Let's talk about the major topic and assignment for this week, which is web literacy. So as far as your homework and your assignment, I'm going to talk about that first, I think, just to kind of, while you're paying attention, I guess. This is the textbook by a guy named Mike Caulfield, and he's got several resources actually, but this is a textbook that he produced a few years ago. It's Web Literacy for Student Fact Checkers and Other People Who Care About Facts. So that's you. You are a student And you are going to be a fact checker this week, and hopefully, for the rest of your life, right? I mean, we all should be fact checkers. That's kind of the point. And it's a textbook. It's open access. As you can see here, I'm clicking my way through it. It's published on a platform called Pressbooks. So that means that on the left here, you have the chapters, and then each chapter or each section has sort of sub chapters basically. So you can see like these are the 4 habits, the 4 moves and a habit. That's kind of the high level overview of this methodology that he talks about. And then each of the subsequent sections, like sections 2, 3, 4, they dig deeply into some of each of those specific methods in the what he calls 4 moves. So I'll talk about each of those moves and introduce it in my own terms in a little bit, but this is the basic structure of this website. What I'd like for you to do is, for this, for homework, do this today, is start reading this book. So you've got this, you can kind of start at the beginning and click your way through it by clicking at the bottom right, or you can use the table of contents, but I want you to at least get through probably this page. So this is, it's called chapter 3, but as you can see, most of these chapters are really just a page long. So it's really just kind of one thing. So I would say get to chapter 3 today, and it's not very long, just to kind of see Mike Caulfield's take on this. And I'm going to add some of my own ideas and context, but I want you to see it in Mike Caulfield's words. You can also take a look at this is an article in the New York Times that was published last year. And this is an interview with Mike Caulfield and a couple other people, and kind of a slightly more updated approach that he mentions here. So I recommend this as well. It's just if you like reading kind of journalistic takes on things. I've also, by the way, this article is on the NewYorkTimes.com, IntoMyTimes.com, which sometimes has a paywall. Like I have an account, so I was able to access this. But if you get to this page and you can't view it, I put a copy of this in Perusall. I'm not going to assign it and ask you to annotate it like we did last week, but it's there in Perusall if you want to access it that way. If you can't access it this way, you can access it through Perusall. Okay, so where was I? Yeah, so take a look through these first 2 things, really just to get a big picture sense of what this book is about. You can also take a look at this. This is another thing too, the 4moves.blog. This is a website basically where Mike has shared sort of sample claims, like things that people have put out there in the web that you can practice your skills on. And he doesn't give you the answer. So if you look at I don't know, rock crushes snowflakes. So if you are curious about this particular claim, it doesn't answer this for you, but it opens this question: did this actually happen? Basically, I haven't actually looked at this claim, but I am kind of curious to see what the context here is and what Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson actually said, and sort of what it actually means. These are things that require more investigation, and that's the point of practicing your web literacy skills, is like finding the context that's missing from this rather clickbait kind of alarming title. There's something more behind this, and your job as a fact checker is to find out what actually was that original context, and then therefore to determine with that once you have that context, to determine, is this headline correct? Like, is it ethically correct, or is it twisting things to make it more sensational, to make more people feel like clicking on it like that? And that's probably the case here, I'm guessing. So that's kind of the goal of what we're doing here. Now the assignment for you all, I'm going to ask you all to find a claim, investigate it, and then write up a report about your findings. And this is going to be a report or an article that should mirror the structure of what you might see on Snopes.com as a fact-checking, which is a fact-checking debunking kind of website. And I'll talk about the structure for that, but your goal is going to be to find something that's out there, a claim that you've seen, a claim that you've heard, something that you've seen people say or act on that you think is dubious. And this should be something that you don't already have a idea about. Ideally, this should be something that you have heard, but you're not sure about it, or it sounds dubious, but you don't know for sure, because I want these to be genuine questions as much as possible. We will find that there's a lot of work being done in this space. If you go online and Google a lot of these topics, you will find somebody debunking these things already. But I want you to, as much as possible, find topics that are not yet debunked so that you can do some real work. And if it needs to be debunked, go ahead and debunk it. Or if it turns out to be true, go ahead and provide some evidence that the claim is true. All right, so here are the 4 things we should do when faced with a dubious claim. So this is the fact-checking methodology that Mike Caulfield talks about. This is the thing that you should do before you share something, before you click like on a Facebook link or retweet something or tell somebody about it or make a decision about your personal health based on something like this. Whenever there's some dubious claim, and there are a lot of claims, there are lots of facts, there are lots of things that are going by, especially about COVID. So there are things that we need to, be careful about, and this is how we can exercise that care before we share, before we like, before we retweet, before we tell somebody about something that we've heard. So the first step is to check for previous research. So has someone already figured this out? Like, has this been debunked? And a lot of times you can just Google it. There's a lot of information on Google. In fact, if you go to the Google News page, you can customize the Google News, so you might see something a little different than mine. But over here, mine, I didn't add this. I think it just popped up. This is the kind of fact check blurb. So it just shows you kind of current, usually pretty current kind of things, or recently debunked claims that have been circulating. So there's obviously, well, unsurprisingly here you see some things about the Buffalo shooting. You see some things about I don't even know what the context for this one is. The U.S. is not backing a WHO takeover of national health policies. I wonder if that has to do with the baby formula. I don't know, but I have not heard that claim, so I don't really know. But clicking here, I can see what PolitiFact thinks about it, and I like how PolitiFact organizes things. You just sort of see it as the claim. Like so Michelle Bachmann made this claim, and then they give you the answer. No, the U.S. is not backing a WHO takeover of national health policies, and then they give you kind of high-level bullet points. You're going to be creating something similar to what I'm looking at here, this PolitiFact document, about some claim that you spend some time researching. Anyway, so the first step is to check for previous research. And if you find an answer that you trust, then great. If you trust PolitiFact, then great. If you're not sure about PolitiFact, you can check other websites. So if you trust Snopes.com better, or if you find that they make more sense, you can check this over here. I don't know if this particular claim, like this seems like a more obscure kind of claim, so they may not have covered it here. But I'm not seeing this one specifically coming up, although maybe this baby formula stuff is related. Anyway, you can look for multiple debunking, fact-checking websites and often find something. And if it's a well-researched answer, if you trust the source, if other people trust that source, then you're probably in good shape, and you can go ahead and consider that a settled question. But if not, you have some other work to figure out as well. So the second step in the 4 steps that Mike Caulfield talks about, is to go upstream. So figure out, where did this claim come from? So in this case, I guess the one I clicked on, Michelle Bachmann, is the original claim. I guess I didn't really read it, but that seems like that is. But maybe she heard that from somewhere else. Maybe there's some other source that she's referring to in that, and you can see what her source is. And then you can keep tracing that upward until you find the original point where this claim came from. And a lot of times you'll find that there is some original claim, some study perhaps, or some policy or something, and then downstream that gets distorted and recontextualized in different narratives. So going upstream often can also debunk essentially the downstream misinformation that's built around it. So going upstream, and we'll talk about each of these sources, these methodologies in detail. Right now I'm just giving you the high level. All right, so first of all, you check for previous work. Has this already been researched? If not, then where did this claim come from? And then finally, and because I say finally because step 4 is really just do the same things over and over again. But the next thing you can do is, once you get upstream, if you're not sure about a particular source, read laterally. So figure out what other people think of that source. And surprisingly, Wikipedia can be a great way to find out about a particular source. And it's not just like learning about its credentials or who the board is or whatever, but figuring out what other people think about it. Is this something that is widely cited in, let's say, the New York Times, or is it something that is like has its results hidden from Google because of its likelihood of unreliable information? Like, in other words, what is the reputation of this source? And usually you can use that, you can discover that by searching for information about that source. We'll talk about doing that too. That's called reading laterally. Yeah, and then finally, if you didn't figure it out, then go back to step one, keep working, right? And the idea is like you really should never be sharing a claim or sharing an article that discusses a claim until you're sure that that's true. And that's something that sometimes you can't get a definitive answer about, and that's okay. You don't have to know everything, but that probably means you shouldn't share it if you can't get a definitive answer. Okay, and actually for our web literacy assignment, you also may find that you don't get a definitive answer about some of the claims that you're interested in researching, and that's okay too, but that research is still valuable, so we will do that too. Okay, this is a simpler version of this same, it's really the same methodology, but this is the version of it that Caulfield talks about in the New York Times article. And it has an acronym, SIFT, so that makes it maybe a little bit easier to remember, and also sifting, kind of has to do with sorting and deciding what's true or not. So it's a nice acronym. I like the acronym. So the first step is just to stop, right? So before you share something, just kind of stop. This is kind of the check your gut feeling kind of thing. Stop for a minute and take some time and use that time to investigate the source. If possible, find better coverage, and if you find something that is a quote or a claim or media, like an image or a video, trace it back to its original context. So SIFT. Yeah, investigate the source, find better coverage, trace claims. The steps are slightly out of order compared to the 4 moves, but very similar. Okay, another thing I like to sort of say that this boils down to is don't trust your gut, because if you think about, so imagine the context, like you're on your Facebook or whatever, you see something, a friend has shared something, you're going to have a gut feeling about it. You're going to have an emotional reaction to it. And media that is so-called clickbait is designed to trigger those emotional reactions. And content that triggers those emotional reactions is more likely to get shared. So you're going to, that's kind of the tool. That's the thing that Facebook is good at, is getting people to share things based on their emotional reactions. So they see that content and they see more ads as a result. Like that's the ultimate goal of Facebook, is that you spend your time on Facebook. I've got this study, I've got a statistic cited in the notes for today that should be pretty revealing, which is that 59% of links that are shared on social media have never actually been clicked on. So in other words, if you're seeing a link, if you're seeing a story shared on Facebook by your friend, it has, gets you upset about something, there's a good chance they have not read that. In fact, there's almost a 2/3 chance that they have not read that article. And so if you feel that emotional response and you feel like sharing that too, it's worked. That's the trick. That's the trap of Facebook. And I'm saying Facebook here, but it's true for any other social platform at all. Twitter, even public Discord servers. Those kinds of things are places where people share content. Anywhere where you're sharing content, the headline, if there's an emotional punch in the headline, people are going to share it, whether or not that's going to override their sense of reality or fact, or need to fact check it. And so you've got to check that, like as a fact checker, but just as a user of the web, as someone who is subjected to this kind of information, it's really important not to trust your gut, and sometimes to give yourself a sort of a gut check, like a pause, and decide, does this actually make sense, or is it just making me upset? And if it's just making you upset, it's probably not worth sharing. It's probably not, may not even be true. So make sure that you don't just go with your gut feeling when you are thinking about sharing things. This is general advice. Okay, so let's talk about the web literacy assignment. So what you're actually going to be doing with this. I do recommend that you get started on this today. So I've already said you should read the textbook today, but also I want you to think about a topic today, or choose a topic today, and actually tell me what topic you want to study today, because I want to vet these a little bit and make sure people are choosing good things, and also that there's not too much redundancy across different topics. So ideally, I would say choose that topic and start working on it today. Really do the research and writing tomorrow after I've had a chance to teach through the methodology. And then later this week, I'm hoping that a number of you will be at the point where you can share the draft of your article so others can review it and you all can benefit from that. And then finally, of course, reflect on it on your blog. So this is kind of the high level view of this. Now, I've listed these steps with specific days. I take for granted that many of you will be doing this in less time or in different steps, maybe even in different order. But sorry, I'm seeing my son outside and he looks like he's up to something. He's marching around with a broom. I don't know why. Okay. It looks like he's about, okay, he's digging. No, he's just sweeping the grass. Okay, weird. But anyway, so yeah, this is kind of the recommended way to work your way through this. But I also understand that many of you may do something different. That's okay. All right, so here we are at step 1 today. And your first step is to choose a claim to investigate. Now, I'm going to talk about what general characteristics a good claim has, but then I'll give you some examples to choose from. So a good claim, and when I say good, I mean good in terms of the assignment, like something that would be a good choice for this assignment, not good as in actually good, but good as in a good choice for this assignment, is something that is verifiable, a claim that can be proven true or not. Also, it will be good if it's something that has actually circulated in social media. So where if you can find examples of people talking about it. And also something that has not already been well covered by Snopes or PolitiFact or other websites like that. In other words, if someone's already done the research here, it's not as good of a choice because you don't have much work to do. You can just say, oh, here's a Snopes article. And that's easy. What you want to do is spend some time actually practicing the method here. So I don't want you to, if you find it on Snopes or PolitiFact, I'm probably going to say don't use that claim. And that's why I'm asking you to tell me what claims you want to, what claims you're interested in first. So if we look at the assignment, I've got a list of a few topics here. These were kind of just off the top of my head. I think some of these have been widely debunked at this point, so they may not be as good as they used to be. Some of them I think could take a bit more research too. Like for example, this idea, I think this one's an interesting claim. This idea that the vaccine has a tracking chip, which is the fulfillment of the prophecy about the mark of the beast in the Bible. I think there's some interesting context to that claim. I don't think it's true. I'll just, spoiler alert, but I haven't really researched this, so I'm kind of curious to see, like, why would someone think that, or why would someone share an article that had that claim in it? I think that's an interesting one. There's other things that you might be interested in that so most of these are kind of COVID-19 oriented claims. You don't have to choose something COVID-19 related. It's just that's sort of the main, thing that people have been confused about for the past 2 or 3 years. You may find something more urgent, more interesting, something more current. Totally fine. I want you to find something that is ideally something that you've actually seen out there, and even better if it's something that you have that you think is important to correct the record about. So please feel free to research that. So here's a form I would like for you to fill out. Let me see. I'm going to go ahead and put this in here. The form here is where you're going to tell me your top 3 choices. And you know what? I'm going to change something here. I'm going to make the third one optional. So at least 2 choices is what I'm asking for now, and up to 4 choices of claims that you're interested in researching. Dubious claims that you are interested in either verifying or debunking. He's hammering now. Okay. So this is a form. I'm going to share the form in both places. And I see a question there. And yes, you can. So those are listed as examples, as available examples. Like I said, though, I want you to be thoughtful about it. And also, some of them are better than others. So I still want you to tell me that's your choice. And I might have to say, no, I'd rather you do something else. But those are available, definitely. Yeah. So here's the Google form for expressing your top 4 choices. Okay, so here's, and I'll put it in Discord as well. And I also want to try to avoid redundancy to some extent, so that if everybody's choosing the same topic, I'll make sure that you're not all actually researching that topic, right? But again, the best case scenario is you find a topic on your own, or like you hear somebody say something, or you see something on Facebook and you think that doesn't make sense, or I have some questions about that, and then that's something that you can investigate. Okay, so that's the idea. Now, where was I? Let's talk a little bit about kinds of claims. I'm using this word claim, by the way, and I do mean that in a fairly technical way. So this is a rhetorical term. And a claim, there's a kind of a traditional way to break down different kinds of claims, different kinds of things that people say are true. So you can have a claim of fact, a claim of value, or a claim of policy. And I've got all three of these written out referencing the movie Titanic for, I don't know why. But there are certain things that are true or false about Titanic. It is true that it is a movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. That is true. And that's something that's a claim of fact. And that's the kind we're interested in here. A claim of value has something like a quality word in it, like the greatest or worst or best or most important. These are things that are values, and those are things that you can argue for but can't really be proven true or false. And policy also, this is something that has to do with what we should do based on this information. That everyone must watch Titanic or no one should watch Titanic. Those would be claims of policy. And again, they're not going to be verifiable. And that's kind of a technical word. A claim of fact is verifiable. Like that's something that we can prove is true or is false. Or we can argue that we might have to say that the evidence is overwhelmingly that it's true or overwhelmingly that it's false, whatever. But we are still able to articulate a reasonable true false claim about a claim of fact. And all of these examples are claims of fact. So those are things that could be, they're meant as possible choices, but also they're meant to illustrate the structure of the kind of claim that I want you to research here for these. Right? So these are things that are, 5G technology kills birds. Okay, is that true or false? I don't know. I would have to research that. But that's something that could be proven true or could be proven false. It may not have been proven true or false yet, but it is at least possible to imagine a world in which it is proven true or false that that is the case or not. Claims of value and claims of policy, these are really not verifiable in the same way. We might all agree ultimately that Titanic is the greatest movie of all time. We might have different types of evidence we could marshal towards proving that claim, but we can't really prove it in the sense of a claim of fact. We can't say, yes, true, this is the greatest movie of all time. We could say things like it has the highest box office returns of all time, adjusted for inflation, which might be true, I don't know. We could say other things like that, but we can't say the greatest because we don't have a clear, verifiable definition of what greatness is. Okay. All right, so again, share your top 3 or 4 choices. The more choices you can come up with, the better. And I will give you, as soon as I start seeing those come in, I will give you feedback to tell you which idea I think you should go with. And I'm going to keep track of these in a spreadsheet so that I can make sure that there's not too much redundancy across these different topics. Try to get this done today. Even if you're not ready to work on it until later this week, try to get your choice in today so that I can vet that and you can know where to start once you get into it. And also I can do that vetting to make sure that these are good choices. Okay, so questions, comments, concerns. I'm going to be in Discord. Like if you see me online with the green dot, in fact, I just noticed I've got mine. I'm invisible at the moment, but I'll switch myself to online. If you see me online, feel free to chat. If you would like to have a more extended conversation, use my contact form to schedule an appointment with me. My office hours will again be from 1 to 3 today, so you're welcome to schedule that time if that's helpful. I think it could be for a lot of you, so I really recommend that. We can also use that time. I can use that time to give you feedback on your work from week 1 if you have completed that, or even help you through different parts of week 1 if you're still working to that, right? But I'm happy to do that. Just to review, your tasks, your things that you should be doing today, ideally, are listed on the note for today. So this is this page here. So you've hopefully now learned about the premise and workflow of this week's assignments. You should read the introduction and first really 3 chapters of the Web Literacy textbook. I'll make that note earlier. And then you should choose a claim to investigate for web literacy. Digital culture, I haven't talked about that yet. I don't really plan to right now, but I'll just point it out to you that I'm giving you more choices here. So these are there are many more options under the digital culture set of modules, and so I'm giving you the basically free reign of these. I really recommend a few of them. I really like Wikipedia. Digital privacy is kind of the thing that I started off today talking about, so if you're interested in that, you can learn some more about it here. If you are interested in, and also personal data tracking kind of is too. Internet of Things, YouTubing, memes, digital accessibility. Yeah, so several things that are important areas of the cultural impact of digital technology. Those are the kinds of things that we're talking about here, basically. So choose whichever one, and similar to last week, you'll start off with an initial blog post explaining your goals and ideas about it, and then work on something, and then write a final blog post and share a brief video by Friday night. Okay, so those are the two big things this week. Okay, as you can see, I'm kind of winding things down. And I saw I got a hello from someone. Hello, welcome. So I'm not sure. I'm seeing this question from Shakib. I don't know how you say that, but when I was talking about fact, value, and policy, those are different types of claims, and you really want a type of the thing that you want is a claim of fact. So I was using that to distinguish different kinds of things people might say and show you that you should find something that is expressible as a claim of fact. And what you'll be discussing about it is actually, I guess I could show you this too. This is something I was going to talk about more tomorrow, but this is the template that you'll be filling in for the report. So this is your claim expressed as a question. So in this case, this is the, I'm sort of referencing the conspiracy theory you may have heard, which is that birds are not real. I think birds probably are real, but this is a claim that people have made. So if that's the claim you would be making, you would express that in the, what's the blue text right here, the answer right here, and then under here, list examples of that claim, people making that claim. If you know the background for this claim, then write about it here, and then evidence here. So essentially this is going to be an article, and you're going to have 2 or 3 paragraphs probably under each of these headings. And also possibly screenshots and links and other kinds of evidence to support your findings. So, okay, so that didn't exactly answer your question, I guess, but it gave me a chance to talk a bit more about something else. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, to go back, let me go back to my slide because I like the visual I made for that one. This is when I'm differentiating types of claims, I'm trying to show you that the claim of fact is the one that you want to focus on. That's the kind of thing you're looking for. Dubious claims of fact. It's kind of a technical way of phrasing it, but sometimes technical phrasing is necessary for precision. And I'm trying to be very precise here. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. I haven't seen you comment again yet, but hopefully that, processing that's making sense to you. Okay, well, I'll wrap up the stream, or I'll switch to the outro slide, I guess, and but I'll stick around. I'll be online for a bit if you have any quick questions, and then I'll be in office hours this afternoon, and then I'll be back streaming again tomorrow at 11. That seemed like a popular time, and I had 7 or so viewers at a time on here, so that's good enough, I think, for me. And of course the video is available later, so you might be watching it there. Okay, well, have a good afternoon, everyone, and I will see you tomorrow, if not sooner. Okay. Bye. Here we go. There we go. Okay, have a nice day.